get into Lopez real quick. Let's get into Lopez real quick. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about George Lopez and Ralph Barbosa. The internet went crazy this within the last week or so, and I think rightfully so. There are some people that will argue that George Lopez, like anybody else, doesn't owe anybody anything, doesn't need to help anybody. He came up himself, whether he had help or not. And I got to respect that argument. And I do respect that argument. I'm not going to ever say that anybody owes anybody anything because they simply don't. Nobody owes nobody anything. But then again, when you bump into somebody at a store, you don't have to say, excuse me, oh, I'm sorry, or my bad, or however you want to apologize. But that is the classy thing to do. Or you don't have to sit there and when you see an older person coming through a door or something, you're going to see him about to grab the door. You don't have to open that door and let that older person come through the door. In other words, you cannot buy class. Class, you can have $1 billion and you can still be the biggest scumbag douchebag in the world. And I'm not saying George Lopez is the biggest scumbag douchebag in the world, but he's up there. He's up there doing what he does. And the reason I have put pressure on George Lopez is because George Lopez has a podcast and he has attempted to get into the political realm. Can't see it. Well, George has stepped into the political realm, and I say this by the last time, well, it was twice. The first one I got on his ass was because of the famous tortilla incident out in San Diego, which he pretty much mocked and said CNN called him, and what the hell was he gonna do? He's just a comedian, It's like, in other words, f those people. I don't give a crap, man. But George is also pushing the BLM movement, Latinx. We gotta help everybody. And the last one was when he sat there and said, "If you are an enemy of drag, you're an enemy of mine." In other words, he's taking a political stance. And if you watch that interview, it wasn't even something that I believe that he really believes. It was just something that somebody in his camp, his PR person, his agent, his manager, whoever said, "George, when you get up on The View, somehow, some way, just get in there and make sure to defend drag. This is your number one thing you have to do." Because during the conversation, he just jumped out of nowhere. It's like me asking, "Hey, George, how you doing, man? How was breakfast this morning?" "If you're an enemy of drag, you're an enemy of mine." That's how it came out. It just came out of left field. It was something that was completely rehearsed by him. He just had to put it out there. Why? So that community would come after him and he supports. In other words, George will support people that will make him money. George will support people that are trending. George does not support brown people, and he made it completely clear. So to me is this: once you step into the realm of politics, you're free game, homie, because there's a lot of other Latinos, Mexicanos, Chicanos, Calimax that feel the same way as George. I don't call them out, and I know a few that I feel that are the same way, but I don't call them out because why? Because they stay in their place. They stay in their comedic world. They stay in their actor world. They stay in their singing world. They stay in their rap world. But the second you come into the political realm and start speaking about stuff like this, and I disagree with you, I'm gonna come at you, homie. I'm gonna come at you, and I think I have every single right to come at you because you're sitting here thinking you're gonna be able to tippy toe into the political realm, into the podcast world. Nah, you are free game. When you start speaking about political issues, you have become free game, and that's exactly what happened to George Lopez. It has nothing to do with him, at least not for me. Me saying, "Oh, this guy just doesn't help." No, you want to sit there and be politically correct, George. You want to sit there and be this woke person on The View just to have the LGBT community, the woke community. "Oh my God, George is such a hero, he might be your hero. He ain't our hero." George Lopez is a guy who has done very well for himself, and rightfully so, because he's one of the comedic geniuses. He is. I can't sit there and say he's not. Is he as funny as he was? To most people, not, because the stuff starts getting old and all that. Ralph Barbosa is the new guy in town. Well, apparently George had a phone conversation with Ralph, and this was confirmed by I believe it was the LA Times and Ralph Barbosa's camp, and they said it was an overall pretty good conversation, and I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was George calling him, "Hey, man, I didn't really mean it. I was just having a conversation." I'm sure it was an apology, but I'm sure that George really didn't want to do it. At least that's my opinion. I'm sure that George just finally got too much heat, and they're like, "Dude, you just signed You just signed a deal for a whole new season to your show. Your own community is fucking giving you backlash. Everybody's pushing back on you. You need to go and apologize. But this will show you, people, the power in numbers. When platforms start getting together, when people start getting together, when the social media thing and starts putting pressure on people, not just George, anybody who's either a comedian, a business owner, anybody who has anything to lose, you start putting pressure on them. They start thinking, man, I may lose some money. Guess what? They're going to bow down, homie. That's exactly what George did. Do you really think, after what George said, that George really wanted to make that phone call and tell this young punk that he thinks in his head that hasn't made his bones, that is nobody? Hey man, I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to say that about you, man. I think you're a great. I'm sure that's what that was a script. I'm sure you're. Hey man, I'm sorry. I apologize, man. You are a great comedian. I was just playing. La 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 la. The whole shtick. But George is full of it, man. George is a guy who will sell out to whoever's paying him the bigger bucks. And to me, that is such a disappointment because you already got money, George. You already got money. You already made it. If you notice, when it comes to a lot of the African Americans who've made it, man, they'll push up, homie. They will press up for their people and respect for that. They will sit there and stand up for their people. When they make it on top, I'm not saying they're bringing everybody up because, no, like I said, that's not the problem I got with George. The problem I got with George is he wants to get political. He wants to get woke. Well, then you better get woke when it comes to us. You better respect when it comes to us, George, and you just have it. You have dropped the ball time and time again, and you've been exposing yourself more and more. I mean, a lot of stuff has been coming out. Paul Rodriguez has been coming out and saying that's all bull. ODM had another guy, I can't remember his name, but he's also a well-known Latino comedian. He exposed it to that. George Lopez, when he was doing his stand-up, he would not work with other Latinos, other Mexican comedians. He didn't want them on tour with him. The competition? I don't know. To me, I guess it seems like we thought the rap game was cutthroat, homie, but it seems like the comedian game is even worse, carnal. But hey, you know what? The one good thing that came out of this is Ralph Barbosa, even though he was very well known already, is known even more now around the comedic circle of the world because his thing has been trending. And for him, he's getting his flowers right now. He's a very funny young guy. Yeah, it's not for everybody, but then every movie's not for everybody. Every show is not for everybody. Every rapper's not for everybody. But for the majority of the raza, the majority of America, I think they will find Ralph very funny. And I think that's the good thing that came out of it.